Improve memory after 60 with this powerful Jewish habit. You only need a pen. Hello, my old friends. Have you ever forgotten something as soon as you left the room? Or while telling a funny story, you suddenly forgot the main character's name, making the whole group of friends rack their brains but still couldn't remember? I believe that all of us, at this age, have had times like that. And each time, we mumble to ourselves, I wonder if my memory is good these days. But my friend, don't blame your age. Actually, memory is like a muscle. The more you practice it, the more flexible it becomes. The more you use it, the sharper it becomes. The problem is, do we know how to practice it or not? I once happened to read a story about the Jews, a nation famous for their sharp intelligence and remarkable memory. They have an extremely simple but surprisingly effective habit: taking notes. Not writing to store and then putting it in a drawer. But it is to write to think, to connect, to engrave deeply into the brain. Write to understand, to remember, and to make knowledge your own. It sounds easy, but in fact, the way they write is an art. And the interesting thing is, this art can be completely applied to our lives. Those who have gone through more than half of their lives but still want their minds to be clear and their memories to be flexible. Did you know, a study by Princeton University in the United States has shown that handwriting, that is, taking notes with pen and paper, helps us remember information much better than typing on a computer. Because when writing by hand, the brain has to process information more deeply, has to select and express it in its own language, not simply copy it exactly. And it is that very processing that helps strengthen the memory. That is also the reason why Jews not only teach their children to write from a young age, but also use writing as a lifelong brain training tool. But you will ask me, we are no longer in school, what do we use to take notes? It is true that we are no longer in school, but that does not mean we do not need to learn anything more, right? Every day of life is a classroom. A good quote, a new recipe, an idea that comes to mind while making morning tea, all are worth recording. And it is from those small notes that we begin to create a habit, the habit of observing, thinking, associating, and remembering. And good memory also starts from such seemingly trivial things. I still clearly remember the story of Mr. David, an old friend living in California, who was over 70 years old this year. Every time we met, he brought a small blue notebook, old and densely handwritten. He said that was his external memory. Every day, he wrote down things that made him think, unanswered questions, and even trivial feelings like today's noodles at the old restaurant tasted better than yesterday. I asked, why do you write that down? He smiled, squinting his eyes, to remember. Not only to remember my story, but also to remember how I look at life. Thinking back, isn't that the most precious thing? Starting from then, I also practiced carrying a small notebook with me. At first, I only wrote a few lines every day, small things like today's beautiful weather, remembering to call my daughter, or the new pumpkin soup recipe I learned online. But then gradually, my hand wrote faster, and my memory suddenly became more flexible. The strange thing was, the things I used to forget, like forgetting the names of acquaintances, forgetting the reason I entered the kitchen, gradually decreased. From then on, I understood that it wasn't because the notebook had magic, but because when we started writing, we also started to pay more attention, live slower, and think more deeply. That's what brings memory back to life. If you're wondering, so what should I write down? I think the answer is, anything that feels worth writing down. It doesn't have to be anything big. It could be a dream you had last night, a funny conversation you had with your grandchild, or a quote that resonated with you. It could even be a list of things you're grateful for today. Just by picking up a pen and writing it down, you're already on your journey to memory training naturally. Another important point that Jews pay great attention to when taking notes is that they do not just write down the exact words of others, but always write along with their own thoughts, feelings, or questions. For example, when reading a quote like, "Memory is not a place to store information, but a door to understanding," they will write down, "Am I understanding what I read, or am I just storing it?" This way helps the brain no longer be a quiet warehouse, but become a continuous flow of reflection. And reflection always goes hand in hand with deep memorization. I have a niece who studies psychology in New York, and she said that in some memory courses, professors often encourage students to practice associative note-taking, that is, not writing down each piece of information separately, but finding ways to connect them. For example, if you learn about the regions of the brain, instead of writing hippocampus, where long-term memory is stored, write hippocampus is like a library in the head, where you store your first memories with your loved ones. When you connect new knowledge with personal experiences, the information is not only on the page, but also deeply ingrained in the mind. And you see, this has no age limit. We can absolutely do it, even do it better, because we have a whole store of memories to connect with. And then there will come a time when you look back at the pages of your notebooks, see the lines are crooked but vivid, like pieces of yourself. Sometimes you will laugh to yourself when reading old stories, sometimes you will be surprised by a sudden idea that flashed a long time ago. But most importantly, you will feel like you are alive, thinking and remembering. And there is nothing more precious than living like that. I know, starting a new habit at this age is not easy. Sometimes just picking up a pen makes me feel lazy. But think of it this way, every line you write is not only a reminder to your brain, but also a wave to yourself, hey, I'm still here, and I still want to learn, still want to remember, still want to live every moment. There are many more interesting things about note-taking and how memory can be restored through small actions like that. And there are also many secrets from the Jews that we can learn more. Now that we understand why note-taking can be a golden key to memory, and how to start that journey in the simplest way, let's continue with a very real question: how to make note-taking a part of daily life, not just a passing idea. I believe that if a habit is associated with positive emotions, it is easier to maintain. And the Jews understand this very well. In their culture, writing is not simply a learning tool, but a form of showing respect for knowledge and life experience. Many people in the Jewish community start each day by writing down one thing they are grateful for or one thing they want to learn today. Just one line is fine. But that line can change their mood, their memory, and even the way they face life. There is an old Jewish man living in Florida named Eliezer, who is over 80 years old. Every morning, he wakes up at 6 a.m., makes a cup of peppermint tea, and sits by the window writing down 3 things in his notebook: how the weather is today, how he is feeling, and something new he wants to learn or remember. Some days it's a Spanish word he doesn't know, some days it's the name of a plant growing in his backyard, sometimes it's the name of a song his grandson played in the car last week. These may seem insignificant, but over the years, they've become a thread of life inside him. And he says that's why he still feels alive each day, not lost in the years. This brings me to another aspect of journaling. It is not just about remembering what happened, but also about keeping yourself in the flow of time. Our brains, as wonderful as they are, can sometimes get lost in the thousands of memories. But those pages, when written with a conscious heart and mind, will be landmarks that help us remember who we are, what we thought, felt, and dreamed. And the more landmarks like that, the easier it is for our memories to stay on track. Another interesting thing that Jews often do, and this I find very instructive, is that they often write questions rather than answers. When reading a book, they not only write down the main idea, but also write down, what makes me wonder about this, why did the author use this example, or what would happen if I applied this idea to my life? It is this kind of questioning writing that keeps the brain in a state of exploration. And memory, you know, works best when it is stimulated by curiosity. If we try to apply this to our daily lives, we can start by writing down small questions. Why am I more forgetful today than yesterday? Is it because I slept less, or is it because I watched the news before going to bed? These seemingly simple questions make our brains work more actively, connecting information better. And each successful connection, the memory is strengthened by another layer. I remember reading an article from the Memory Research Institute at UCLA. They studied the brains of elderly people who had the habit of writing a diary every day. The results showed that these people had a hippocampus, the area that processes memories, that was more active, thicker, and had fewer signs of aging than the group that did not write. And the thing is, it's not because they write better, it's because they write regularly, think regularly, and reconnect the fragments of their lives through their own language. And that's another key point, write in your own language. No need to follow a format, no need to be formal, no need to be like anyone else. Just be real. Real with feelings, real with thoughts. When you write, "Today I forgot the name of the vegetable seller, the person I've been saying hello to for the past 3 years. I feel a little sad about that." At that moment, you are training your memory not only with words, but with the emotions associated with memories. And things associated with emotions are always remembered longer, more deeply. Another thing I want to share, and it's also a habit I learned from a Jewish friend living in Chicago, is to create a topic notebook. He doesn't just have one notebook, but 3, one for everyday life, one for creative ideas, and one for things that surprise him. He says that when you write like this, your brain groups information, making it much easier to retrieve memories later. Just like in a library, books are placed on the right shelves, making it easier to find them. And you know, memory is also a kind of living library. If you organize it properly, remembering a small thing from 5 years ago will not be too far away. I once tried to follow his example, and I chose a topic that was closest to me, things that make me smile. It seemed simple, but when I wrote it down, I realized there were so many, from the sound of birds in the morning, to the look in the eyes of an old friend when listening to an old song. Those little things, when recorded, not only nourish the soul but also keep the memory alive. Because remembering isn't just about remembering information, it's about remembering how it feels, what it smells like, the moments that make your heart flutter. And if you find writing by hand too difficult, your hands are shaky, your eyes are blurry, or you're just used to typing on a computer, that's okay. It's not the medium that matters, it's the presence of mind when you write something down. You can use your phone, your tablet, or even a voice recorder. But try to take a moment every day, just a few minutes, to stop, look back, and write down a part of yourself. It's that habit of stopping that is the medicine for long-term memory. Dear friend, each line you write is a thread connecting the present with your memories. Each question you ask yourself is a small light illuminating the area of your brain that is covered by the dust of time. And each page you flip through, even if it is just to look back at an old autumn morning, is the moment you prove to your brain that, I am alive, I still remember, and I still want to understand more about myself. So, don't be discouraged if you can only write one line today, or if you can't think of anything to write tomorrow. The important thing is that you have started. And from that starting point, your memory will slowly awaken. Not noisy, not rushed, but persistent and full of life. When we feel that writing is not only a tool to help us remember longer, but also a way to enrich our inner self, this journey suddenly becomes more meaningful than ever. There is one more very special thing that I want to share with you. This may be one of the most profound secrets of the Jewish people in training their memory, not just for a day or a month, but for a lifetime. And that is learning to write as an act of connection, not just storage. This may sound a little vague, but think about it. Throughout our lives, don't we usually write to retain information, shopping lists, phone numbers, addresses? But the Jews do it differently. They write to connect. To connect with memories. To connect with others. And especially, to connect with themselves in their deepest state of reflection. I remember reading an article by a Jewish educator living in New York. Her name is Miriam, who said that at the end of each week, in her family, the whole family would sit together, not to tell stories, not to have a big meal, but to share what they had written down during the week. It could be something that had bothered them, a special word, or something they had learned from a stranger. She said that what touched her most was that those seemingly small notes revived memories that, if not written down, no one would remember. And in moments like that, memories are no longer personal. They become shared memories. And that is what makes writing not a lonely act, but a nurturing act, for both the mind and the family. I believe that if we can also create such moments, even just once a week, to sit down, look back at a few lines we have written, and share them with a loved one, then our memories will not only be trained, but also revived. Because memories do not live in silence. They need to be told, they need to be mentioned, they need to be given. A study from Harvard University once showed that when older people share a specific memory with others, especially a memory associated with positive emotions, brain activity increases significantly, especially in the areas related to concentration and language connection. That is, you not only remember better when you write, but you remember more deeply when you tell what you have written. And here, I want to invite you to try a small but very effective thing. Pick any page of your notes, maybe yesterday, last week, or even last year, and call a loved one. Tell them something you wrote. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be a poem you wrote down because you liked it, a dish you tasted and wrote a few words about, or a moment you were grateful for. Just write it down and see what happens. You might be surprised at how much more vivid your memory becomes after just a few minutes. I know, not all of us can easily start or maintain a notebook. Some people will say, "I'm not used to writing, I'm shy because of my bad handwriting," or "I don't know what to write." But my dear friend, we don't have to be writers to write. We just have to be ourselves. And the page, whether blank or old, never judges anything. It just waits for us to come and be honest. You can start with sentences like, "I woke up with a strange dream today," or "I feel lighter when I smell coffee," or simply, "I miss my mother." Just one sentence, but if you write it with all your presence, it is already a brick in the memory bridge. And then, day by day, week by week, you will find yourself remembering more clearly what you wrote, and even what you didn't write. Because your brain will learn to listen to you. It will gradually become sensitive to the things you value. If you make a habit of writing down good things every day, your brain will learn to pay more attention to the positive things around you, which will help you not only remember better, but also live happier. A friend of mine, a 67-year-old man living in Oregon, once told me that he not only writes down every day, but also draws a small symbol to accompany each note: a sun if he feels grateful that day, a drop of water if he is sad, and a leaf if he learns something new. It doesn't have to be beautiful. Just to look back over the month, he can read his mood and experience through pictures. And that helps him recognize the cycle of emotions, thereby knowing how to take better care of his spirit. Sometimes I wonder, if everyone our age had a notebook like that, the memories of an entire generation would not be washed away over the years. Instead, it will become a treasure, not for history, but for ourselves and our loved ones. And if you are holding an empty notebook in your hand today, I want you to know that you are holding a key, not only to your memory, but also to your own very own doors. Doors that you may not have entered for a long time, because you were busy, because you forgot, or because you never thought you needed to return. But you can return. Anytime. With just one line, you will realize that you have never really lost your memory. It is just that sometimes your memory needs a gentle hand to guide it. And writing is that hand. My dear friend, here I just want you to remember one thing: training your memory does not require complicated methods or modern tools. Sometimes, it all starts with a pen and a piece of paper. From a moment of silence during the day. From a question asked to yourself. From a note about what makes you smile. Small changes like this, when repeated, can make a huge difference, not only for your memory, but for your quality of life. And believe that, no matter what age you are, you can absolutely learn to remember, feel, and live more deeply every day. If you find these shares useful, please leave a comment about the notebook you are using, about what you wrote today, or simply how you feel after listening to the video. I look forward to reading those lines, as a way to extend the story that we are writing together. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on warm conversations like this in the future. The more people write together, the more memories are revived, the more memories are preserved, not only for today, but for the future. Wishing you good health, a clear mind, and every page you write is a step closer to yourself. Thank you for listening. Goodbye and see you in the next videos.